Good morning. My name is Kyle Plummer. I work with ProMiles, a developer at ProMiles, and I primarily work on the database and API, the team lead for the database and API team. So I'll be talking this morning for a few minutes about BrDR databases, and we'll be going over, hopefully, almost everything you need to know about a BrDR database. We'll be talking about some basics of the database. We'll be going into a little bit more detail on some best practices. And then finally, we'll be looking forward, looking to the future. What can we expect as we look ahead? But first, what is the database used for in BrDR? Well, we know it's already been discussed. Anyone who's been using the software now for a while knows that BrDR has and uses a relational SQL database. Right now, what that means is that it's your data, your bridge data, and really almost all the data in BrDR is going to be stored in a SQL database. We're currently supporting Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle database. You can see there on the screen what's supported. That's straight from our bridge startup guide. So that's included with the installation material when you would get the 7.1 installation material. If you look at that bridge startup guide, there's a section in there as well for what's supported. And you'll see that starting with version 7.1, we'll be supporting the last few versions of Oracle, and we'll also now be supporting SQL Server 2019. So we know that's been a question many of you have had. We are starting with 7.1, going to be supporting SQL Server 2019, and we'll be moving away from then SQL Server 2014. It was also mentioned earlier, I believe in a presentation yesterday, that we are also supporting officially Oracle container databases. What that means is that BrDR can be deployed as a pluggable database within the Oracle container database architecture. When it comes to database versions, one of the biggest questions we get is, well, what does officially supported really mean? Does that mean that I can't use this other version 1, 2, 3 of the database that's not on the list? And the short answer to that question is no, it doesn't mean that. You can still use another database, but by officially supporting a database version, what it means is that we've done thorough testing against it, and we're sure that BrDR is going to perform as expected against that database version. If you'd like to use a version outside of that, for example, Oracle just recently released version 21C as their innovation release. It's available now. If you want to jump ahead, get ahead of the curve and use Oracle 21C, well, that's fine. You can go ahead and try and do that. But because we haven't officially put it through our testing and it's not on our officially supported list, that means that there may be unknown issues. You may run into some problems that we didn't foresee and that unfortunately we don't have a fix or a resolution for right now. But what that doesn't mean is it doesn't mean you've avoided your service agreement. It doesn't mean that you won't get support from us anymore. We are absolutely here to help. We're happy to help in any way we can, even with an unsupported version. And please feel free to reach out to us because oftentimes you may find issues that we'll be able to fix for the next release whenever something is going to be then officially supported. So if you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to us. And thinking about then our databases and some best practices, perhaps the #1 piece of advice that we can give, and that you've probably heard before, it's not new, and that's to take a database backup. We really encourage regular database backups. That is a backup of your entire database, whether it's in Oracle or SQL Server, that's then backed up and stored somewhere else. What regular means really depends on your organization and your organizational needs. If you have a large database that maybe gets frequently changed, it's changed multiple times throughout a day, maybe you want to back up your database every night. If it's perhaps something that doesn't change so often, maybe once a week would be okay, or even once a month, or however often. Really, the important thing is to take a backup, to keep it somewhere that you have access to it, so that if something were to happen, you would have as minimal and little data loss as possible. And in line with that, we also encourage, beyond just a database backup, to have regular, we'll call them bridge-only backups, where you would export your bridges from BrDR in XML format and store those somewhere else, store those somewhere separately. It's always better to have more backups, to have more data available that you don't use and that you can later throw away, and then to get yourself into a situation where now you've lost data and you've lost that valuable time and data. Speaking of database backups, we also always recommend taking a backup anytime you're going to migrate BrDR between different versions, anytime you're going to do something on your server or on your database, if you're going to upgrade your database version, if you'd like to upgrade your server, you're moving servers, anything like that, we always recommend taking a database backup. And thinking then similarly or in line with backing up is also the idea of having separate environments even within your database or maybe within your organization. We encourage, or what we recommend is having even separate database, production, development, and testing environments. Having entirely separate database environments for maybe your production database as opposed to something that's used for development or used for testing. What that helps is it helps to have a little bit more control of your bridge inventory. Maybe you have one production database that stores your complete bridge models, whereas you have another database that you can use for a little bit more development work, and even another database that you can use to test migration or test upgrading. And if you have that set up or something similar, then it allows you to have really minimal downtime between version changes. It allows you to have minimal downtime if you do run into an issue where you have to restore your data. And it allows a little bit of a more flexible workflow as well. Additionally, something we've seen quite frequently is having individual users have a local database. So one option with the installation of BrDR is to install a local SQL Server Express on that local computer, and then to allow the user to have something that they're able to work with that's just local to their computer. It doesn't have an impact then on your central database. It doesn't impact anything anyone else is working on. Because it's local, because it's likely a smaller database, performance will be better, and it allows a little bit more of an isolation from your standard bridge inventory. So those are just some ideas, some recommendations. Again, each organization is different. You may find that your organization would have or would like to have another database. Perhaps you have a separate database for permitting or a separate database for another process, for another step rather, throughout your QA/QC process. Really what we're just trying to recommend is having something that allows flexibility while at the same time minimizes downtime, minimizes any potential risk of your data loss. And speaking of data loss, one of the biggest areas, or one of the areas that we get the largest number of questions relating to databases is with migration. So when you go to migrate your database, the first thing we always recommend to do is please stop and take a backup. And if you encounter an error during that migration process, please don't push ahead. Again, we're here to help. So when you're migrating, you see an error, it's okay to let the migration itself finish, but save that migration log, send us an email. Again, we can see our support email there that Herman just discussed a few minutes ago. Send us a support email, open a JIRA ticket, a support ticket, and don't please just move ahead. Don't just push into the next version and start using it if you've encountered any errors. Even if it's maybe just one or two errors that look pretty harmless, we're always happy to help to review that. We're here to help. We would much rather solve a problem, spend a few minutes preventing a problem, rather than 6 months down the road try and fix some issue that occurred because of a bad migration. So please, if you have any issues or if you have any questions really, do not hesitate to reach out to us, to contact us. You'll likely speak to myself or Jeff or someone else on our team. We're here, we're happy to help. And as we look to the future, so what can we look forward to in the future? Well, we mentioned the few databases that we're currently supporting, but we're not standing still. We want to look forward to what's up and coming. And one of the biggest areas that we've gotten inquiries about that we're looking towards is supporting Microsoft Azure SQL. We know there's a few different flavors, we'll say, of Azure SQL. They have a few different ways that Microsoft can host that database. that's something we're actively considering. We're actively looking into that support. If that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to us. Something else that's under consideration is Postgres or PostgRay. I've heard it's called different things. I've heard it said different ways. I'll call it Postgres for the just for our presentation here. Postgres, if you're not familiar with it, it's a free open source database, but it is an enterprise quality relational database. It's used by many large scale organizations, and so that's something that we're looking into as a possibility for BrDR. Maybe some database administrators may not have as much knowledge or that same level of comfort with Postgres, but it is something we're looking into using, whether it's for in a hosted capacity or perhaps even in the future in an on-prem environment. If you're looking to maybe use an alternative with a little bit of a different license fee structure there, it being free and open source, that may be something you consider in the future. And similarly, as I briefly alluded to, we'll be looking to hosting a BrDR database. So what we mean by that is that we would ProMiles or would actually be hosting a database, a BrDR database that your organization, it would still be your organization's data, your database, but it would free up those resources from having to maintain an on-premise server, an on-premise database. It's something that we've been looking into now for some time. If that's something you or your organization may be interested in, please feel free to talk to us. If there's something here that we haven't talked about, that we haven't mentioned, but that you're interested in relating to a database, again, please contact us. We're always looking for ideas. We're always looking to see what you want, what will make things easier for you, and what will allow you to focus more of your time and energy on using the product, on using BrDR, on building those bridge models, and take a little bit of that headache away from having to do some of that IT maintenance. So if there's anything that, any other suggestions that you have, please contact us. And I'll say it one more time, we're here to help. So if you have any questions, any comments, don't hesitate to contact us. We always love to hear feedback from everyone. And if you have any questions even right now, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them after our presentation.